The day I found out my mother gave away my apartment, the one I paid for every single cent. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat on the kitchen floor staring at the wall, thinking, how did I not see this coming? My name is Lily Rose, and I need to tell you something I've never said out loud before. Not to my friends, not to my therapist, not even to myself, really. Not in the full, honest way that hurts when the words come out. I grew up in a house where love was always conditional. I just didn't know that yet. When you're a child, you don't analyze the way your mother smiles more at your brother than at you. You don't notice that his report card gets put on the refrigerator and yours gets left on the counter. You don't register these things as red flags because you don't even know what a red flag is. You just know you feel a little colder than you should, standing in the middle of what's supposed to be a warm home. My brother's name is Derek. He's 3 years younger than me, and for as long as I can remember, he has been the golden one, the one who could do no wrong, the one whose mistakes were always somebody else's fault, whose failures were always life being unfair to him, whose wants were always treated like needs that the whole family had to scramble to meet. And I was the older one, the responsible one, the one who was just supposed to figure it out. I don't say this with bitterness, at least not the way I used to. I say it because it's true, and because the truth matters when you're trying to understand how a story like mine even happens. I left home at 22. Not dramatically, not with a slammed door or a teary goodbye. I just quietly packed my things, got a job in the city, and started building something of my own. My mother didn't ask me to stay. My brother was 18 at the time, still living at home, still being handed everything, and I think my leaving actually made things easier for everyone. One less mouth to feed. One less person taking up space that Derek could use. The city was hard. The first 2 years were genuinely brutal in a way that people who haven't struggled alone in a new place can't fully understand. I worked double shifts at a restaurant while taking night classes. I ate the same pasta 4 times a week because it was cheap. I slept on a mattress on the floor of a studio apartment that smelled like someone else's cigarettes, and I told myself every single night, this is temporary. This is just the beginning. And slowly it was. By 26, I had a real job. A career, actually, in accounting, which sounds boring, but gave me something I had never had growing up: stability. By 28, I was saving aggressively. Not just a little. I had a spreadsheet, a 5-year plan, and a discipline about money that came directly from years of not having any. I want to buy property, I told myself. Not rent forever, not throw money into someone else's mortgage while mine never moved. I wanted something real, something mine. It took me until I was 31. 3 years of serious saving, careful investing, and not one single splurge vacation, not one new car, not one expensive anything. I found a 2-bedroom apartment in a building I loved, in a neighborhood that felt like the life I had been working toward. The price was steep, but manageable with my savings and a mortgage I had planned for. And here's the part that I still, even now, can barely believe I did. I called my mother. I called her because despite everything, despite the years of feeling invisible in that house, I still wanted her to be part of this moment. I wanted her to be proud of me. Isn't that the most human thing? That even when someone has spent your whole life making you feel like you come second, some part of you still reaches toward them, still hopes that this time will be different. This time they'll see you. She was excited on the phone. Genuinely, warmly excited. She said she wanted to see the place, and she came up the following weekend, and we walked through every room together. And she touched the windowsills and looked at the light and said, "Lily, this is beautiful. You did this." I felt for the first time in years like I was enough. I should have known that feeling was a warning sign. The apartment was officially mine by November of that year. I had the keys, the mortgage, the insurance, all of it. I furnished it slowly and carefully. I painted the walls a soft sage green that I had thought about for months. I bought a couch that took me 6 weeks to choose. I made that place mine in every single way a person can make something theirs. My mother visited several more times over the next year. She had a key. I had given her one because she was my mother, and I thought that's what you do, you trust your family. She would stay for weekends sometimes. We were closer than we had been since I was small, and I let myself believe that our relationship was finally shifting into something equal, something adult. Meanwhile, Derek was getting married. He had been dating a woman named Cassandra for 2 years, and the wedding was set for the following spring. Everyone in the family was thrilled. My mother was over the moon, planning, calling, organizing everything around this wedding like it was a royal coronation. I was happy for Derek, genuinely. I had nothing against Cassandra. I bought them a generous gift off their registry and smiled at every family dinner. What I did not know, what no one told me, was that somewhere in the middle of all that wedding planning, my mother had quietly decided that Derek and Cassandra needed a place to live after the wedding, and she had equally quietly decided that the place they needed was my apartment. I found out on a Tuesday in March, not from a conversation, not from my mother sitting me down and explaining her thinking. I found out because Derek called me, sounding slightly uncomfortable, to say that he and Cassandra had started planning their move-in and wanted to know if I had any boxes they could use. I remember staring at my phone. I remember the words not making any sense to me at first, like they were in a language I almost spoke, but not quite. Your apartment. I said, slowly, Derek, what are you talking about? And he said, Mom said you agreed to let us have the place after your lease is up. The thing is, there was no lease. It was my apartment, my mortgage, my name on the deed. There was no lease ending, there was no agreement, there was nothing. There had been a conversation I apparently was not part of between my mother and my brother and possibly Cassandra, in which my apartment, the apartment I had saved for nearly a decade to buy, had been offered, accepted, and practically packed up, all without me knowing a single word about it. I hung up with Derek and called my mother. She answered on the second ring, cheerful, like nothing was wrong, and I said, Mom, did you tell Derek he could have my apartment? There was a pause. A very specific kind of pause that if you have a mother like mine, you already know. The kind of pause that precedes not an apology, but a pivot. She said, Lily, I just thought since you're doing so well and the kids need a place to start their lives. I said, Mom, it's my apartment. I own it. I paid for it. She said, I know, but you could always just get another place. You make good money. Derek and Cassandra are just starting out, and they can't afford. And that was the sentence that cracked something open in me that I'm not sure has ever fully closed again. You could always just get another place, like what I had built was just a placeholder, like my years of sacrifice were just a warm-up for something I'd hand over when the family needed it. Like I was, at the core of it, still the one who just figured things out, while Derek was still the one who was taken care of. I told her no. I said it as clearly as I have ever said anything in my life. I said, no, this is my home. I will not be giving it to Derek. This conversation is over. I expected her to argue. I expected pushback, maybe guilt, maybe tears. What I did not expect was what came next. 4 days later, I got a call from my aunt, my mother's sister, who said with a kind of careful gentleness that told me she had been asked to make this call, that the family had been talking, and that given how important it was for Derek and Cassandra to have stability as they started their marriage, it would be really wonderful if I could find somewhere else to live within the next 4 days so that Derek could start moving in before the wedding. 4 days. Not 4 weeks, not 4 months. 4 days to leave the home I had bought, furnished, decorated, and lived in for over a year. I sat with that for a long time. I want to describe what that feels like, because I think sometimes people hear a story like this and think, well, just say no and move on. But it's not that simple when the people telling you to erase yourself are the same people you've spent your whole life trying to earn love from. There is something specifically devastating about realizing that your family has been quietly tallying your worth this whole time, and the number they've arrived at is less than. Less than Derek. Less than his wedding. Less than what the family needs. I didn't move out. I want to be clear about that. I did not move out. I did not hand over my keys. I did not give my apartment to my brother. But I did something that surprised even me. I started talking. I started telling people what had happened. Not in a dramatic viral story way, but in a quiet, deliberate way. I told my closest friends. I told a colleague I trusted. I even eventually told a therapist who helped me understand something that I think is worth saying out loud. Being the responsible one doesn't mean you owe anyone your resources. It means you're capable. Those are two completely different things. My mother went through phases after I refused. First, there was the guilt trip. She stopped calling for 2 weeks, and when she finally did, every sentence had a little wound in it, a little, "you've really hurt the family" energy. Then there was the softening, where she tried to reframe the whole thing as just a misunderstanding, like she had simply miscommunicated and hadn't really meant to give away my home. She had just floated the idea. Then there was Derek's version, where apparently I was being selfish and jealous of his happiness and couldn't stand to see him succeed. None of it touched me the way it would have 2 years earlier, and I think that's the most important part of this story. Because here's the thing about growing up the overlooked child. You spend so many years twisting yourself into something smaller, so that the family feels comfortable, that you forget you're allowed to take up space. You forget that your needs are real. You forget that you can say, "No, this is mine," without it meaning you don't love your family. What happened to me wasn't just about an apartment. It was about a pattern that had been running for 31 years, and this was simply the moment it got too big to ignore. Derek and Cassandra found a rental. They moved in after the wedding, and from what I understand, it's perfectly nice. My mother and I have a relationship now that is different from what it was. Quieter, more boundaried, and if I'm being honest, more honest. She knows I won't be rearranged for the family's convenience. She knows I see the pattern now. And I think some part of her, somewhere underneath all the deflection and the habit of making me smaller, might actually respect me more for it. I still live in my apartment. The sage green walls are still there. The couch I spent 6 weeks choosing is still there. On the windowsill of the living room, I have a small plant that I bought the week all of this happened, as a quiet act of ownership, a way of saying I'm still here. This is still mine. It blooms every spring, and I think about that sometimes, how the things we fight to keep aren't always just things. Sometimes they're proof that you know your own worth, proof that you can hold a line, even when the people you love are standing on the other side of it, asking you not to. I held mine. And if you're somewhere in the middle of a story like this, if you're the responsible one, the overlooked one, the one being asked to give up what you've built so someone else can be comfortable, I want you to hear this clearly. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to have something that is yours. You are allowed to take up space in your own life without apologizing for it. And if the people who are supposed to love you can't see that, well, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let them sit with that while you go home and water your plant. If you're watching this in the middle of the night because you can't sleep, or on your lunch break because you needed 5 minutes of something real, drop in the comments where in the world you are and what time it is. I'd genuinely love to know. Have you ever had someone try to take something you worked for and had to fight your own family to keep it? If Lily's story made you feel seen, hit subscribe. New stories drop every week on LilyCalmStories, and every single one is real, raw, and worth staying up for.